We coming down to earth and be more realistic about things.
Inspiring you have to be a businessman, and it's about the music.
The Bush Babies, Flatbush, Brooklyn, active since 1989, featuring Lord Khalil, aka Mr. Man, Lee Majors, and Light. Today's feature is the other side of the music business they don't speak about enough, when talent just can't seem to find its window against the competition. With a slew of artists that would become hip-hop legends, creating a golden era of hip-hop from the early to mid-90s, the Bush Babies constantly found themselves just on the outside looking in. They could see the party, hear the music, even had jamming music of their own to add to the function, but never got their time center stage. This led to an obscure career legacy for a group that just faded into the forgotten realm on dope music passed up on because of circumstances miscontrolled. For a few moments, the Bush Babies looked like they were about to hit their stride, with singles like Rerun Things, aka It's Like That, The Love Song, and Remember We as extensions of the conscious collective Native Tongues that produced legendary hip-hop artists and groups like A Tribe Called Quest, De La Soul, and Queen Latifah, to name a few. Not to mention Mos Def getting his first major look on the Bush Babies' lead single The Love Song in 1996. It was an important time in hip-hop, as from my perspective, I'd say it gave hip-hop the foundation to its best representation, that even today you feel pockets of the boom-bap sound and have artists promoting a better lifestyle for all instead of just violence, drugs, and living life as close to the edge as possible. Conscious hip-hop not only gave rap a more positive look, it was becoming more and more popular until it was the rap style of choice at the time. The Bush Babies were three New York artists with Caribbean backgrounds in the heart of New York City, where it all started, among a melting pot of rap artists trying to get on with a similar sound and concepts of conscious. Some did it better than others and became known and successful because of it. Some did it long enough to produce classic pieces of the era that also lived on forever, while most became casualties of the music business mishandling their talent and dropping the ball on the small window artists have to cross over or make music a viable career. You work so hard in one direction in life only to find out the path isn't going to lead to the success you envisioned, and then what? In a field where age matters, you can't reverse or pause time. When it doesn't happen, that lasts forever, and most are left scrambling at an age past their prime with nothing but hope and a plan B. The Bush Babies came up in a classic time but never joined the same legacy, and for these reasons were left on the outside looking in on one of hip-hop's golden eras. What happened? Let's talk about it. Salute to almighty David L on IG for this request. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth Music. Let's get it, man. Take a minute to like, subscribe, and comment on who I should do next. Coming from Caribbean backgrounds, Light, Jamaican, Mr. Man, Trinidad and the Bahamas, and Lee Majors, aka Babyface Chaos, also having Trini and Panamanian ties, they found a different source of inspiration, and it led to a connection between them that was natural and immediate. Hailing from different parts of Flatbush, they'd come together to rhyme at first around the neighborhoods, then in Washington Square Park, which was an area filled with MCs all sharpening their skills for the love of hip-hop or a music business opportunity. From there, the group would perform in talent shows at the Lyricist Lounge and other places, doing an impromptu show in Prospect Park where DJ Enough called them on stage to perform. The crowd loved them, and their radio spins went up from there until they built enough buzz and connections, along with performing live in offices for labels, that got them a deal with Reprise/Warner Music Group in 1992, just 3 months after the group was formed. Stunt number 1, Where Were the Adults? In an interview with the CTC show, Lee Majors was asked what exactly happened to the Bush Babies, and according to him, a lack of guidance is where things all started to go down the wrong path. But first, you have to understand the times many black and brown underprivileged kids were living in. Poverty and drugs were a normal everyday occasion in the hoods across America, and for most, an opportunity can be as little as money given to you that lasts only a few months. For rap artists of this background, given the chance to sign a record deal and become professionals paid to do music in those days was a where do I sign type of thing. On top of that, the courtship was blinding for everyone involved except the label and the seasoned businessmen running them. When Reprise/Warner were courting the Bush Babies, they brought them out to the city in limos, gave them each a credit card and a number where they could go shopping and order chauffeured car service around the city if needed. The group felt like this must mean they were finally at the door of getting on and living the life of rappers they'd see from afar. So they signed off on a deal that left them in the long run feeling neglected and underpromoted, often having their music shelved for long periods of time. In the midst of working on their debut album, Warner changes staff and in comes a new team led by VP Ian Alexander, who couldn't figure out what to do with the Bush Babies back in those times. Instead of figuring it out, they chose the less money invested approach and delivered little to no promotion for their scheduled debut album, ironically titled Ambush, releasing it without even the group knowing it was coming out. Obviously, this led to a lack of sales and notoriety, which usually falls on the artist, not the label, in negotiation and in the eyes of the fans. The all-important debut album for an artist is career-breaking if it doesn't go right, starting with getting as much eyes and ears on the project. Unfortunately, the Bush Babies didn't get that and lost a lot of momentum. Stunt number 2, timing and disgruntled artists. The Bush Babies went through a very traumatic experience on their first release, learning the importance of the decision they made with Reprise/Warner and attempted to clean up the act on the business side, mainly by keeping their eyes on the moves being made on their behalf and the ones they could control, like focusing on the music and creating the best songs and cohesive second album they could. They were able to enlist Postanos from De La Soul to produce their lead single, The Love Song, featuring a young Mos Def unknown to the public at the time. They called it Gravity because it felt like they were coming back down to earth as artists, experiencing the ups and harsh downs of the music industry. Like most relationships, it usually begins on a high, where the words yes and sure are often spoken, and then at some point after you have given in to the idea of being exclusive, both parties are over it, unless it's fruitful to their future. For Bush Babies, being signed artists was beginning to worry them, as they were not only not seeing the money for their work they thought they deserved, but they also wasn't being pushed out there like their peers, all while ambushed by the sloppy release of their music. Example, the huge delays, starting with album 1 that sat for almost a year before being released, and delays with album 2 that was recorded during the boom of the boom bap conscious hip hop era, seeping over into the shiny suit era that further made the Bush Babies sound less appealing. This fumbling of the ball when it came to the group upset its members. Poor promotion, along with them not seeing pretty much any money from their albums, made them decide one day while on tour that they weren't returning home until their situation was fixed. Warner ended up releasing them shortly after the album ran its course. The Bush Babies began to part ways and attempt to figure out life individually, with Light becoming an A&R for a few years. Mr. Man delved into production, along with Lee Majors working behind the scenes as well. Stunt number 3, weren't producing hits. The reason music artists fail or don't end up meeting expectations can be explained in many different reasons and either party's fault, but one thing that remains the same is when the music is selling, everyone is happy in the end. A huge problem with the Bush Babies then and looking back now was their music was always the light version to whatever was going on at the time. Again, the 90s was a very competitive era that produced artists that were the foundation of hip-hop for what many of us now remember. There were so many artists rapping and rapping in the same vein that the cream had to rise to the top for opportunity. The Bush Babies didn't have anything, in my opinion, that would stand out amongst that competition. They weren't the best lyricists, and in that department certainly weren't deep enough or groundbreaking enough or made hits like their peers. Light sounded cool, but was in a position maybe even ahead of his time with the Sean Paul look and feel just not the timing to turn that into success. Mr. Man and Babyface were cool rappers, but the bars didn't hit, nor did the personality, and it didn't amount to sales, which is a huge reason Warner eventually released them. Bottom line is it takes a certain it factor to produce hit records, and the Bush Babies made dope music for the time, but the results weren't moving the needle mainstream. All in all, the Bush Babies were mostly hurt by a poor label situation that led to delayed releases and poor promotion. They had a dope name, was in the right era, but signed to the wrong initial label and simply walked away from it all when it wasn't working. Super dope group remembered mainly in the underground, and for these reasons, their growth was stunted. Salute, much respect. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth Music, and I'm out.